Hello YouTube, this is Ezekiel doing part 2 of my series on map building and scenario design. Part 1 was looking at the research I'd undertaken for Operation Windsor, a 3rd Canadian Division attack onto a fortified German position around Carpiquet Village and Airfield. Unfortunately, there was a few issues with that map. I just couldn't get some things to work. So I put that one on hold. I haven't given up all hope, but I've put it on hold for now. And instead there's another one I had milling around the back of my head for a while. That was the action at the hamlet of Fournel, or Fournel. I'm not too sure how you pronounce that, but it's just me butchering French again. This particular village was the site of quite a major action on the evening of D-Day between the 502nd Parachute Infantry Regiment and the German convoy moving north towards the beaches. It's more famously known as the 3 Patrol Action. That's what it's generally been known as because the Americans came in at 3 different directions on the village itself. Basically, the action itself was pretty much a mistake. It was just a sort of happened. It wasn't a planned event or anything. I'll give you a rundown of it. Basically, Charlie Company of the 1st Battalion of the 502nd 502nd Parachute Infantry Regiment of the 101st Airborne had come in from this direction, from the east. They were under the command of Captain Hancock, who reported to the battalion commander, Lieutenant Colonel Cassidy. Cassidy had set up his CP to the west of Foucaultville, which is north of this map, about 750 odd metres or so, and his battalion was stretched between there and basically across down to this southern point, fighting German forces from multiple directions. So Company C was advancing from the east, south of Saint Germain de Verville, sorry, and they were coming in from this direction anyway, and they sort of ran into a German convoy heading up these roads through the hamlet and up to Foucaultville, where another, I think it was Company A, I'm not too sure, of the battalion was actually already set up in defensive positions and holding it. So basically the action here prevented some of the reinforcements from reaching that other company closer to Cassidy's command centre, and so it was pretty much an accident. So anyway, Captain Hancock himself, he sent up one of his platoons. When I say platoons, you've got to remember this is early of the campaign. It's the end of the first day of D-Day, and basically, these platoons are not at full strength. The numbers, the estimate they had was only around 50 men, 50 or 60 men maybe, if you're at a stretch. So basically, he sent one of his lieutenants, Lieutenant Smith, with his platoon was about 23 men, and they advanced into the village, and there's no one there, and basically they decided to reconnoitre it while Smits and a couple of his colleagues decided to run into a farmhouse here, this one here, and basically decided to do. They reckon they came across a whole lot of German equipment, which in reality, everyone knew that they actually gone in there to try and loot some souvenirs, and as it was put. So while they're rummaging away and the rest of his men are going through the village, the Germans arrive. They're coming down this road, two half tracks with 88s, towing 88s towards the Foucaultville. Now they don't really know for certain, but it's probably a full battery of guns. They know some got away to the north to where they intended to go, but at least one of them was actually stopped right about here. And anyway, with those guns, of course, reinforcements, some infantry moving up, and that's what caused this raging fight between the advancing German infantry and the paratroopers, which were coming from this direction, and also had forces on this side of the village by that stage, less Lieutenant Smith's platoon. So while Lieutenant Smith's is over here, a lot of his men are by now are over here in this part of the village, and suddenly these Germans cut them in two. So Lieutenant Smith's his men here shoot wildly at and stop one of the half tracks in its tracks, and also, no pun intended, and also takes out one of the trucks. Now they run back inside, completely outnumbered, and they desperately try to find a way out, but they can't. So what they do, they jump into what was a pig trough, really, built into the earth, and basically and literally lay there for hours, completely hidden, as the Germans rushed around and couldn't find them. So they literally laid in pig shit while this battle raged around them, until they were able to sneak out, and they actually escaped to the southeast. Those few people actually. But anyway, while that's all occurring, more Germans are coming up this road, and from nearby other villages. And meanwhile, the other American platoons of Charlie Company move in, one straight down the road, one from the back here, and also the Lieutenant Smith's platoon, under the command of a Sergeant Headley, I think it was. They come in from this side. That's why it gets its name, the 3 patrol action, 1, 2, and 3. And now, why they sort of ran into some Germans here was because the hamlet was being used as a bit of a supply dump. There was already, the Germans weren't actually there when the Americans came through, but came back, or they were going through there. So what they thought was, safe ground behind the front line, which they thought was still, further up north of this map here. So so basically that's how the battle developed. And by after a few hectic hours of fighting, they were given the order to pull out, get back. And they just didn't have this. They didn't know what was in front of them to the south, so they were ordered to for the night to head. I think it was just northeast of this map, or somewhere up here. And I think literally by the next day, they actually just swept through unopposed when they had support from the beach itself. So that's the action itself. It probably is most famous because for the Big Trough incident. But anyway, so that's what I was really designing. The map itself, what you see in front of you, is it's probably 70% complete. Spending a lot of time on the village itself. Still got a lot of work to do down here, of course, as you can probably see. And I thought in this video I'll just give you a little bit of a rundown of what I've been doing and some of the tricks that I like using. If it doesn't get too boring, may actually do a bit more of the editing while I'm recording. Okay, so basically, under Combat Mission with the version 2 upgrade, you can, of course, paste a map. Have a map overlay. So this one's just from Google. This is what the place actually looks like right now. Today. So one thing you're going to immediately notice is it looks a little bit wonky. That's because I've actually slightly turned it. So the map itself isn't true north. True north, from memory, is a little bit over that way, I think. The reason I had to turn it is the first trick in map making is if you keep the map proper, you're going to have all these diagonal lines for your roads, for your hedges and that gets very, very hard to actually try and follow. If you try and follow anything precisely in a Combat Mission scenario editor, you're in for a lot of trouble. So just try and leave that at the door. So I slightly skewed the map. So this main road here is roughly straight. It has got some turns in it, but because Combat Mission only allows you to do 45-degree angles, really didn't want to worry about that so much. It would have just looked skew with the village itself not being that straight line as it sort of is. Okay. The problem with that is, if you go back like this, okay, is you see over here, that's the road in real life, and that's where the road's going to be on the map. So it is going to be off slightly. I could have put this way back here, but just sort of would have skewed the road out here, so it would have been way off. So a little trick that I like to use is try and match the points where it does skew, or cut it straight through the middle if you can. What I mean by cutting straight through the middle is it's going to be off, so get to a certain point and literally do it, make the turn a little bit earlier, so you sort of get roughly the point where the turn is going to actually be, if that makes sense. in this case, I left it long like that because it actually made. I wanted to keep the distance between these two roads basically the same, which, as you can see from the map underneath, it really is. They sort of like follow each other with some fields in between, and yeah, the same rules technically apply for the hedgerows as well. You're never going to match them up perfectly. If I did a 45 degree row, 45 degrees on this here, it would probably be out here somewhere. So try to make a best fit. That's the rule. I did try focus on the centre here. I wanted that to be as accurate as possible. So if the flanks here, which I don't think are actually going to be used heavily by the players, I think that's allowed to be a little bit off. So having those sort of leniencies allows more control in this section here. The map itself is it's actually situated in a shallow valley. If I put down the elevation, okay. I've basically put some straight lines across it. I'm going to have to edit this 23 a little bit. It's going to be a little bit of trouble. But basically, that's the valley floor where the village is, and on both sides it actually goes up. It's a little bit higher if you look on Google Earth and do a cross section of it. It's a little bit higher on the German side to the south here. Not by a lot though. Shouldn't give them any huge advantage. The peak itself actually on the map is not actually on the hedgerow. If that 26, that peak of that hill was actually on the 26, it would actually give the Germans a huge advantage, I think. But because it's actually in the field itself, and the actual field tapers back behind the crest, it actually means the Germans will have to come forward to actually engage, get line of sight on the enemy. So, and that just encourages a more close quartered battle like it really was. Elevations are a funny one. I generally keep this not last, but it's not the first thing I do either. When I'm making maps, I basically do all the roads and all the hedges first. That's like the corners of the picture you'll be drawing. They will change over time as you start adding in buildings, and that when you start to realise things still aren't really working up. But you should have an outline of your entire map in roads and hedges and fences. So any of these type of things. Then I do elevation straight after that. So let's just zoom in a bit closer. I'll just delete some of this. So this is just a gravel road. I'll just delete some of that. Now, not a little trick, it's a little bit of a rule, because you can make your roads look a little bit funny. When you come to the corner, you're really going to want to use this here. If you go immediately into this tile here, it's going to be there. Okay, it's going to be off. If you look here, see it's got the edge bit there. That's what you've got to try and avoid. So how you avoid that is actually by giving the first tile of the turn, like that, smooth it out. And in here, you notice this tile here sort of matches it up now. So that's the way you make those type of 45 degree turns. Unfortunately, it does take a little bit more time, but it is a lot more accurate than trying to do everything with 90 degree turns, that's for sure. And just keep in mind that a lot of the roads you'll be doing, especially in Normandy, will have hedges on both sides. So when you're planning your map, always make sure you've got enough room for the hedges before you lay any of the roads. The last thing you want is to draw this enormous big road and then realise, damn it, it's going straight through a village. There's meant to be hedges in front, but I've put the buildings right onto the roadside maybe. Unfortunately, that's so that's why I always like doing that outline of roads and hedges first. So as I said, then I'll go into elevations. Why I do the elevations next is because if you put all the buildings down first, and then you put elevations on, you may find some of your buildings end up being dug into the hillside. That's not necessarily a bad thing, but of course that's not. I'm guessing that 9 times out of 10 that's not what you want it to look like. So doing the elevations first, you can get a sort of the game itself will actually calculate the height scales for you. Now, and that lets you sort of pick out here on this 2D map where the flat spots are, and to make sure that your villages and your town sites and that are going to be on flat ground. So this elevation was sort of really quite simple. It's probably a little bit too simple. I've got to go back maybe, but it's because it's a shallow valley and it's a very small map. I've sort of got away with it in this case of just doing the horizontal lines across it. Now, what that allows me to do is those black cells there, they're actually telling at that particular point, I want the height to be, say, 23, and then I want that next cell to be 26. And the game itself actually calculates the angle it needs to be, and the angle and the height for each cell between, so it's going to meet both of those rules I've set. And that what gives me the hill effect. So here I've told it there's no other rules here, so it just assumes it's going to be 23 all the way to the map edge. But if I want to be 26 there, it's got to actually get up there pretty dang quick. The next rule I've given it is, say, 20 down here. So by that stage it has to be hit 20, and it will more gradually lower the numbers down until it hits that 20. So it's like drawing topographic lines on your map. That's what this system allows. It looks a little bit confusing when you first see it, but trust me, it is a hell of a lot better than it used to be. Way back in Mission 1 days, where I think it was pretty much all manual from memory, so you could get some really, really funny situations. I've also told it to do some this hill here to be a little bit softer. It's only going to go from 23 up to 23. That's sort of sharp actually, but it does actually die away again pretty quick. But everything in between here, except that little point there, everything in here is at perfect flat ground for where the actual hamlet is. I may actually taper these off to the side. I'd have to double check the flanks again on the Google Earth cross section. But the main center of the map here is largely done. It gives me exactly what I need. A good way of testing it as well is while you're doing the elevations, jump into Google Maps or Google Earth, get down into the Street View cam, and actually look up in directions off the map. So I put the Google cam around here, looked north, and could see that from this point here I couldn't actually get line of sight to this point here where the road goes on a bit of a Y junction off. The reason being is the hill itself blocks it out, so that's why I knew I had to do that. And I did the same down here. When you get over that crest, you see the intersection, and you can turn off into that dirt road. So always have Google Maps or Google Earth open while you're doing, especially when you're doing elevations, and that it just gives you that extra tool to see height a lot better than you can on a 2D map. What next? Go to the 3D preview. So this map is definitely not complete. Just a warning, but and as I said before, about 70% complete. So I'll take you a run through the village if it ever decides to load. Okay. So here we are at the back. I'll put the trees on. There we go. So this is the back corner. A little bit of junk. Okay, so we're coming in from the west of the village. We're looking down the main village street. As you can see, the village is very tight up against the road in this case. You can go to Google Earth and walk down the street right now, and you can see it's really, probably even in the game it wouldn't let me put the walls right up here, so this is actually quite open compared to the real village. It's really enclosing. Ignore these little signposts and that, I've just placed them on the map, but they're going to be moved when I need them. This is what I'm sort of looking at now. Keep in mind I'm using a lot of mods for my terrain, for all the buildings now, and also for pretty much I think it's all the terrain as well. So this is where Sergeant Headley got with Smith's platoon, and they came in here and began fighting from this direction into the village. Okay, and this is where all the Germans had their supply dump, and the Germans defended all through here. And this is the farmhouse I said before where the pig trough was. So it's a 2-story farmhouse. Actually, I think it's a 3-story with like an attic, but I probably won't model that. It's a really contained compound. That's why the Lieutenant Smiths couldn't actually escape. He had Germans on the only 2 exits. So sorry, that's where he surprised the half track around here. And there you go. And there's the pig trough. So that's where they ran from this house into the back, dived in there, covered up, and literally sat in there for a few hours while the Germans actually went right around through this whole courtyard and occupied the farm and never found them. So yeah. And when the Germans actually did retreat, this is where they got caught out in this open field, running back towards their own lines. They didn't realise the third platoon of the Charlie Company had set up along here, came through in the back here. So they just cut perfect flanking fire in open field and cut them all down. So yeah, zoom out a bit, and that's what the map looks like. So that's looking from east to west. May have to sort of make this a bit more flat and boring at the moment, but it's not done yet. But yeah, that's the hill I was talking about. So the Germans have this perfect defensive line, except they can't see anything at the back of this field. So they really have to advance and get across that field quickly to mount a defence. So yeah, that's the valley. So walk through one more time. Come to the back here. It's a little bit hard guessing where all the hedges are. If the hedges that are on the maps now, they're really out there back there in 1944, we don't really know. You have to watch why all those personal accounts, and there's plenty of accounts of this particular engagement. So that's why reading those accounts is really good. It gives you an indication of what type of cover the Americans or Germans had, and where they moved through the battle. You can sort of see then, looking at a map, why that would be the case. You can sort of walk your way through it. Another good source I've had for this one is actually another computer game, Brothers in Arms, Earned in Blood, which is the second one in the series. That one is the expansion pack follow-up to the first game. A little bit old now. You can probably get it in a bargain bin for $5 or so. Just wait for a Steam sale or something. I also recommend playing the first game of that series first because it's a continuing story. But anyway, they actually do this particular engagement and have actually mapped out this hamlet for a first-person shooter. So if you look up 3 Patrol Action on YouTube, there is actually a couple of videos of that mission. I love that mission. In that particular game, it's probably, I think, it was one of the best designed ones. It wasn't exactly crazy hard, but it was actually just felt right. It just had that good feel to it, and that's been another good source because it's another eye level movement of how someone else has actually interpreted the engagement. So yeah, that's one of the reasons these fields are all just mud and dirt. Is because, well, they had it, but also just reading that this whole area was largely not abandoned, but being so close to the coast, people had packed up and left immediately. So that's why all the, you got mud patches. I've put in lots of long grass, like so, and especially on these fields over here, just they've been left fallow for too long as the Germans have moved in and started trying to build the defensive walls, the Atlantic Wall, sorry. So yeah, that's sort of why I've gone for this rather than having big open wheat fields. I think that would sort of ruin it a little bit. So I won't get into the actual forces themselves now. I'll leave that to another, the next video in this little series. I don't know when it's going to be, but yeah, then I'll talk about my force selection for this, and also may get into some AI plans. So that's the aim from here. Well, after I finish the actual map itself on those flanks, and also get this all cleaned up, make it a little bit more lived in. The only real bit I'm like 100% happy with so far is the farmhouse. I sort of started on that. So you got a lot of junk in the courtyard here. Some just making it a little bit more lived in, and getting that was a little bit hard. It was actually just a straight pig trough, but it doesn't actually work really well on the actual editor. So that's why it's sort of that shape for this particular mission. But it is, I think it's getting there. It's all pretty damn close so far. You may have to change that a little bit, but that's sort of the thing. So I hope that gives you some ideas. Just drop out of that. I hope that gives you some ideas. I don't call myself a brilliant map maker, so I don't really want to go into too much more tips and tricks because I really don't know them. I just plow along and constantly correct things. I think that's okay. That's probably the biggest tip I can give you. Just get in there and just keep working. It's not going to work, half the time, but just keep trying and don't be scared to delete things and go over it again. Anyway, well, thanks for watching, everyone. I will get back to some more videos real soon. As some of you, I think I put on a post recently, I've been very busy in real life with work. Getting promoted sucks. But anyway, I hope to be back at this really, really soon. So in the meantime, keep gaming, keep enjoying Gustav Line on Fortress Italy, and talk to you all soon.